The metallic clank of my Honda Civic's door echoed through the marble foyer of Marcus's penthouse as I arrived for what he'd called a little family gathering. The valet had given my 10-year-old car the kind of look usually reserved for roadkill. But I was used to it by now. After all, I'd been playing this role for nearly 8 years. Emma. Marcus called from the balcony overlooking his sprawling living room, gesturing with a crystal tumbler of what I knew was 30-year-old Macallan. You actually made it. I wasn't sure that Rust Bucket would make it up the hill. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Laughter rippled through the gathering, his usual crowd of venture capitalists, tech bros, and social climbers. My brother always did enjoy an audience for his performances. If only he knew that his struggling little sister owned the very dealership chain that had sold him his collection of luxury vehicles. Hi, Marcus, I replied softly, maintaining the persona I'd cultivated so carefully. My deliberately modest Target dress and worn flats completed the picture of someone perpetually on the financial margins. Thank you for inviting me. The irony wasn't lost on me. Every car in his garage, the Lamborghini, the Porsche, the custom Tesla, had been purchased through my network of dealerships. Phoenix Automotive Group owned 47 luxury and mid-range dealerships across 3 states, generating over $2.8 billion in annual revenue. But to Marcus and everyone else, I was just Emma Chen, the family disappointment who couldn't even afford a decent car. Come meet the gang, Marcus continued, his voice carrying that familiar tone of condescending charity. Everyone, this is my sister Emma. She's still figuring things out career-wise, but we love her anyway. I forced a smile, nodding at the assembled group of successful professionals who probably made in bonuses what most people considered a good annual salary. Among them, I recognized several faces, clients who'd purchased vehicles through my dealerships, though they'd never met the reclusive owner who preferred to operate behind layers of corporate structure. What do you do, Emma? Asked a woman in a Hermes dress that cost more than most people's monthly rent. I recognized her as Patricia Vance, who'd bought a custom Bentley through our Beverly Hills location just last month. I work in automotive, I said carefully, which was technically true. Nothing too exciting. Marcus nearly choked on his whiskey. She's being modest. Emma works at a used car lot downtown. Sales, I think? Or is it the service desk now? The group's polite interest instantly cooled, their smiles becoming forced and distant. I watched Patricia's expression shift from curiosity to barely concealed disdain. These people had built their identities around success markers, the right zip codes, the right brands, the right connections. In their world, working at a used car lot was slightly above food service and well below respectability. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, like this video, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. That must be interesting, Patricia said, her tone suggesting it was anything but. Do you at least get employee discounts on vehicles? Something like that, I murmured, thinking about the fleet of collector cars in my private garage. The 1967 Shelby Cobra alone was worth more than Marcus's entire car collection, but he'd never see it. The conversation quickly moved on to topics I was apparently unqualified to discuss: recent IPOs, vacation homes in Aspen, their children's acceptances to Ivy League schools. I stood quietly, nursing a glass of sparkling water and observing the dynamics I'd studied for years. Speaking of cars, Marcus announced, clearly building to something, you should see what I just picked up. Follow me. The group moved toward the private elevator that led to his underground garage, a space he'd had custom built to showcase his automotive collection. As we descended, I couldn't help but smile slightly. His new acquisition was a Macallan 720S Spider I'd personally approved for delivery just 2 weeks ago. The garage lights flickered on, revealing Marcus's pride and joy, 6 vehicles arranged like museum pieces under professional lighting. He gestured grandly toward the Macallan, its volcano orange paint gleaming under the spots. Gentlemen, ladies, he announced with theatrical flair, may I present my latest addition. Macallan 720S Spider, 710 horsepower, 0 to 60 in 2.8 seconds. Custom paint, carbon fiber everything, and a price tag that would make most people weep. The group appropriately owed and awed, running their hands over the paint and taking selfies with the car. Someone asked about the cost, and Marcus mentioned a figure that was actually $50,000 less than what he'd paid. Apparently even he wasn't immune to embarrassment about his spending habits. "What do you think, Emma?" Marcus asked, his tone suggesting he was setting up another punchline. "Pretty different from your little Honda, right?" I looked at the Macallan, remembering the 3-month waiting list and the special accommodations my Beverly Hills dealership had made to source the exact specifications Marcus had demanded. The custom paint alone had required 6 weeks of back and forth with the factory. "It's very nice," I said quietly. "I'm sure you'll enjoy it." "Nice?" Marcus laughed, the sound echoing off the concrete walls. "Emma, this car costs more than most people make in 5 years. It's not nice, it's extraordinary. But I suppose when you're used to driving a car with more miles than the International Space Station, everything must look good." More laughter from his audience. I noticed Patricia filming with her phone, probably for her social media story about hanging out with successful people. The irony was that she was inadvertently documenting the owner of the dealership where she'd bought her Bentley being mocked for her supposedly poor choice in vehicles. "I mean, no judgment," Marcus continued, warming to his theme. "We all start somewhere. Remember Dad's old saying about appreciating what you have?" Emma's really taken that to heart with that Honda. "What year is it again? 2014? 2013, 2015, I corrected, though I knew he didn't really care about the specifics. "Right, 2015. Ancient by car standards. But hey, it gets you from point A to point B, right? That's what matters for some people." The casual cruelty was vintage Marcus. He'd been perfecting this particular brand of humiliation since we were children, the ability to demean someone while maintaining plausible deniability about his intentions. After all, he was just being practical, just acknowledging reality, just helping his poor sister understand her place in the world. "Actually," I said, surprising myself by speaking up, "my car has been very reliable. Sometimes the best vehicles are the ones that don't need to make a statement." Marcus paused mid-gesture toward his Macallan, his expression shifting slightly. In our family dynamic, I rarely pushed back, preferring to absorb his comments and move on. But something about tonight, maybe the presence of Patricia Vance, who'd spent $400,000 at my dealership while treating me like invisible service staff, had touched a nerve. "Reliable, sure," Marcus recovered quickly. "But don't you want more than just reliable? Don't you want something that makes you feel proud when you drive it? Something that shows the world you've made something of yourself?" The group murmured agreement, their faces reflecting the values Marcus was espousing. Cars as identity markers, success as a public performance, worth measured in horsepower and price tags. "I suppose," I said carefully, "it depends on what makes someone feel proud." "Well, yes," Marcus said, his tone becoming patronizing again. "But realistically, Emma, you have to admit there's a difference between driving a 10-year-old Honda and driving something like this." He gestured again toward the Macallan. "One says you're successful, the other says you're still working on it." I thought about my private collection, the Shelby Cobra, the 1970 Plymouth Cuda, the modern Koenigsegg that I'd acquired through a private sale. Cars that Marcus could never afford, would never even know existed. But more than that, I thought about the thousands of employees across my dealership network, the families whose livelihoods depended on the business I'd built from nothing. "You're probably right," I said, maintaining my mask of quiet acceptance. "I should aspire to something better." "Exactly." Marcus beamed, apparently pleased that his life lesson had landed. "And don't worry, when you're ready to upgrade, I know some people who might be able to help you get a good deal. Nothing too fancy, of course, but maybe something from this decade." The conversation moved on to other topics, Marcus's recent promotion to partner at his law firm, someone's new yacht share, vacation plans that cost more than most people's annual salaries. I stood quietly, observing and cataloging, building the psychological profile that would make tomorrow's revelation all the more devastating. As the evening wound down and guests began making their departures, I lingered in the garage, studying Marcus's collection with professional interest. The Macallan was impressive, certainly, but I could see several small details that suggested it hadn't received proper pre-delivery inspection, a minor paint imperfection near the rear wheel well, slightly uneven gap tolerances around the hood. My quality control manager would have caught these issues, but apparently, the delivery team had been eager to close the sale. "Quite a car," said a voice behind me. I turned to find David Kim, one of Marcus's law partners, studying the Macallan with obvious envy. "Your brother certainly knows how to pick them." I nodded, thinking about the detailed customer profile my sales team had developed for Marcus, his preferences, his budget limits, his psychological triggers for making purchase decisions. We knew he favored dramatic colors, responded to exclusivity marketing, and was willing to overpay for immediate availability rather than wait for better pricing. "Do you know much about cars?" David asked, perhaps sensing something in my expression. "A little," I said, which was like saying Einstein knew a little about physics. "I've picked up things here and there. I'm thinking about upgrading myself," David continued. "Something sporty but practical. Any recommendations?" I almost laughed at the irony. Here was a successful attorney asking his partner's supposedly struggling sister for car advice, not knowing he was talking to someone who could have him driving any vehicle in the world within a week. "It depends on your priorities," I said carefully. "What matters most to you, performance, luxury, reliability, investment value?" David looked surprised by the sophistication of the question. I hadn't really thought about it that systematically. "Maybe a mix of all those things? Then you might want to consider a certified pre-owned Porsche 911, I suggested, knowing my dealerships had several excellent examples in stock. Good performance, holds value well, practical enough for daily driving. The Carrera S models from 2019 or 2020 offer excellent value right now." David's eyes lit up with interest. "Do you know where I might find one?" I was about to respond when Marcus returned from seeing off other guests. "David, still admiring the Macallan? I don't blame you, it's quite a machine. Actually, your sister was giving me some car advice," David said. "She seems to know her stuff." Marcus's expression flickered with surprise and something that might have been annoyance. In his carefully constructed world, I wasn't supposed to have expertise in anything, especially not in his domain of luxury and success. "Emma reads a lot," Marcus said dismissively. "Online articles, magazines, that sort of thing. But there's a difference between reading about cars and actually understanding them, you know." I watched David's interest cool slightly, Marcus's implication clear: don't take advice from someone who can't even afford a decent vehicle herself. It was a masterclass in subtle undermining, designed to preserve Marcus's position as the family's sole success story. "Of course," David said politely, but I could see him filing away my suggestion for later research. As the evening finally ended and I prepared to leave, Marcus walked me to the elevator with an expression of what he probably thought was brotherly concern. "Emma," he said, his voice taking on the tone he'd used since childhood when he was about to deliver what he considered helpful guidance. "I hope you didn't take anything personally tonight. I just think, well, don't you want more for yourself?" I looked at my brother, successful, confident, completely convinced of his own superiority, and felt the familiar mixture of affection and frustration that had defined our relationship for decades. "I'm working on it," I said, which was perhaps the most honest thing I'd said all evening. "Good," Marcus smiled, his expression relaxing. "And hey, if you ever need help with anything, career advice, networking, whatever, you know I'm here for you, right? Family takes care of family." The sincerity in his voice was what made it so painful. Marcus genuinely believed he was being supportive, that his constant reminders of my supposed inadequacy were somehow helpful. In his mind, he was the successful older brother generously offering guidance to his struggling sibling. "I know," I said, stepping into the elevator. "Thank you for tonight." As the doors closed and I descended toward the parking garage, I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found the number I needed. Sarah Chen, no relation, despite the shared surname, was my head of operations, one of the few people who knew my true identity. "How did it go?" Sarah asked, answering on the first ring despite the late hour. "Exactly as expected," I said, walking toward my Honda Civic, the car I'd deliberately chosen for these family gatherings precisely because it would reinforce Marcus's assumptions about my financial situation. "He's ready. All the preparations are in place," Sarah confirmed. Legal has reviewed everything twice, and the board is briefed for tomorrow's meeting. Are you sure about this approach? I paused beside my car, looking back toward the elevator that led to Marcus's penthouse. For 8 years, I'd watched him build his identity around being the family success story, using my supposed failures as a backdrop to highlight his achievements. Tomorrow would change everything. He made his choice tonight, I said, thinking about the casual cruelty in his voice, the way he'd dismissed my knowledge, the pleasure he'd taken in humiliating me in front of his friends. Now he gets to live with the consequences. The Marcus file is comprehensive, Sarah continued. Every purchase, every interaction with our staff, every negotiation. He's going to be very surprised to learn who's been approving his transactions. I smiled, inserting my key into the Honda's ignition. The engine turned over with the reliable purr of a well-maintained vehicle, because despite its modest appearance, this car received the same meticulous care as every vehicle in my private collection. Schedule the revelation for tomorrow afternoon, I instructed. And Sarah? Make sure the entire sales team at Beverly Hills is present. They deserve to see this. As I drove down the winding hillside road toward my real home, a carefully hidden estate that made Marcus's penthouse look like a studio apartment, I thought about the careful performance I'd maintained for nearly a decade. The modest clothing, the deprecating comments about my career, the acceptance of his condescension, all of it building toward this moment. My phone buzzed with a text message from Marcus. Thanks for coming tonight. Hope you had fun seeing how the other half lives. Winking face, I set the phone aside without responding. Tomorrow, Marcus would learn that the other half was actually the 99%, and that his supposedly struggling sister had been living in a completely different stratosphere all along. The revelation would be surgical, precise, and utterly devastating to his sense of self. But tonight, as I drove through the quiet streets in my deliberately modest Honda, I allowed myself to savor the anticipation. After all, the best reversals weren't just about the moment of truth, they were about the careful construction that made that moment possible. And I had been building toward this revelation for 8 long years, laying the groundwork with the patience of someone who understood that true power came not from displays of dominance, but from the wisdom to wait for the perfect moment to act. Tomorrow, Marcus would discover that his little sister didn't just work in automotive, she owned it. Dawn broke over the city as I stood in my private office on the top floor of the Phoenix Automotive headquarters, watching the morning rush. Our traffic flow past 20 stories below. Each vehicle represented a potential customer, a business opportunity, a piece of the automotive empire I'd built from nothing. But today wasn't about business as usual, today was about family. Everything's ready, Sarah announced, entering with her signature efficiency. Marcus is scheduled for his 2 p.m. appointment at Beverly Hills. He thinks he's coming in to discuss financing options for a potential Bentley upgrade. I smiled, remembering last night's conversation where Marcus had casually mentioned wanting to step up from his Macallan. The irony was delicious. He was literally asking his sister's company to help him buy an even more expensive car while simultaneously mocking her supposed poverty. The staff briefing? I asked, reviewing the carefully orchestrated plan we'd spent months perfecting. Complete. Everyone from sales associates to the service team knows what's happening. Jennifer Martinez is particularly excited, apparently. Marcus was quite rude to her during his last visit. I nodded, recalling the incident reports. Marcus had a pattern of treating dealership staff like servants, demanding immediate attention and special accommodations while making disparaging comments about their intelligence and professionalism. Today, those same employees would witness his world crumble. Legal documentation? Triple-checked. Every purchase agreement, every financing contract, every warranty claim, all bearing your signature as CEO. The evidence chain is ironclad. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus, looking forward to this afternoon. Time to see what real money can buy. Automobile money bag. The casual arrogance in that message crystallized everything I'd felt for 8 years. Marcus hadn't just mocked my car, he'd consistently dismissed my intelligence, my potential, my worth as a human being. Today's revelation wasn't just about cars, it was about respect. Phase 1 begins now, I told Sarah. Initiate the ownership transition announcements. Within minutes, every Phoenix automotive location across 3 states received simultaneous notifications. After 8 years of operating through intermediaries and shell companies, Alexandra Emma Chen would be publicly revealed as the founder and CEO of Phoenix Automotive Group. Press releases went out to automotive industry publications, business journals, and local media outlets. The story was carefully crafted. A brilliant entrepreneur who had built her empire while maintaining personal privacy, now stepping into the public eye to expand into international markets. What the press releases didn't mention was that this revelation was timed to coincide with a very specific family matter. By noon, my phone was buzzing with interview requests. Forbes wanted a feature story about the secret automotive queen. The Wall Street Journal was preparing a piece on hidden billionaires in plain sight. Local television stations were already sending crews to our headquarters, but the most satisfying call came from David Kim, Marcus's law partner from last night. Emma? This is David, we met at your brother's place. I just saw the news about Phoenix Automotive. That's incredible. You're the CEO? I am, I confirmed, enjoying the shock in his voice. But last night, when I asked about cars, you were so modest about your knowledge. I prefer to listen rather than lecture, I said diplomatically. But yes, I do know a bit about the automotive industry. A pause. Marcus has no idea, does he? He will soon. After hanging up, I changed into my real armor, a custom-tailored Armani suit in charcoal gray, complemented by Italian leather shoes that cost more than most people's monthly rent. The transformation from Marcus's struggling sister to CEO was complete. At 1:30 p.m., I arrived at the Beverly Hills dealership in my personal vehicle, not the Honda Civic, but a limited edition Bugatti Chiron that I'd acquired through private channels. The staff was waiting, their excitement palpable as they prepared for the most unusual customer interaction in company history. He's early, Jennifer Martinez reported, her voice tight with anticipation. Arrived 15 minutes ago in the Macallan. He's already complained about the parking situation and demanded to speak with someone who actually understands luxury vehicles. Through the office window, I could see Marcus in the showroom, examining a Bentley Continental GT with the entitled air of someone who believed the world existed to serve his needs. He was wearing his most expensive suit, clearly dressing to impress the staff he assumed were beneath him. He asked if we had any real cars, Jennifer continued, not the starter luxury models he assumed we usually stock. I showed him the Bentayga Speed, and he laughed, saying his sister would probably think it was a spaceship. The casual cruelty, even when I wasn't present to hear it, was vintage Marcus. He couldn't resist putting others down, even when trying to make a major purchase. Time for the show, I announced, straightening my jacket. I walked into the showroom with the confident stride of someone who owned everything in sight, because I did. Marcus was leaning against the Bentley, talking loudly on his phone about some legal case, his voice carrying that tone of self-importance he'd perfected over the years. Marcus, I called out, my voice carrying across the pristine showroom floor. He turned, his expression cycling through confusion, surprise, and something approaching alarm as he took in my appearance. The woman before him bore little resemblance to the modest, self-deprecating sister he'd mocked less than 24 hours ago. Emma? Why are you here? And why are you dressed like a CEO? I finished, stopping directly in front of him. Because I am one. Very funny, Marcus said, his tone uncertain as he glanced around the showroom. But seriously, what's going on? Are you working here now? Did you get promoted or something? I pulled out my phone and showed him the Forbes notification that had appeared an hour ago. Phoenix Automotive CEO emerges from shadows. Meet the billionaire you've never heard of. Marcus's face went white as he read the headline, then the first few paragraphs that detailed my company's massive revenue, international reach, and industry influence. His phone slipped from his suddenly nerveless fingers, clattering on the marble floor. This isn't real, he stammered. This is some kind of joke, right? A prank? Jennifer, I called to the sales manager, who approached with barely contained glee. Please show Mr. Chen his customer file. Jennifer produced a thick folder bearing the Phoenix Automotive Group letterhead. Inside were copies of every transaction Marcus had ever made with our company, the McLaren purchase, his previous Porsche, the Audi before that, even his first luxury vehicle purchase 8 years ago. Every car you've ever owned, I explained. As Marcus stared at the documents, was purchased through my dealership network. Every negotiation, every financing arrangement, every service appointment, all approved by me. Marcus looked up from the papers, his face a map of confusion and dawning humiliation. You're saying you own this place? I own 47 places like this, I corrected. Across California, Nevada, and Arizona. Phoenix Automotive Group generates approximately $2.8 billion in annual revenue. We employ over 8,000 people. And yes, Marcus, your little sister runs it all. The showroom had gone completely silent. Other customers and staff members had stopped what they were doing to watch the drama unfold. I could see phones discreetly recording. This story would be circulating on social media within hours. But you drive a Honda Civic, Marcus said weakly, as if this detail could somehow invalidate everything he was learning. I drive whatever suits the occasion, I replied. For family gatherings where I wanted to maintain a certain image, yes, I drove a modest car. But for business? I gestured toward the window where my Bugatti was parked, its sleek lines drawing admiring stares from passers-by. I prefer something more appropriate to my position. Marcus followed my gaze and nearly stumbled when he saw the Bugatti. The car was worth more than his annual salary at the law firm, more than his penthouse down payment, more than everything he owned combined. The Honda, I continued, serves a specific purpose. It lets me observe how people treat those they perceive as beneath them. It's been quite educational. You've been lying to me, Marcus said, his voice rising with indignation. For years, you've been pretending to be poor while you're actually richer than you'll ever be? I finished. Yes. And do you know why? Marcus just stared, his mouth opening and closing without sound. Because you never asked about my life, I continued. You never showed interest in what I actually did for work. You were so invested in being the family success story that you never bothered to learn who I really was. You preferred the version of me that made you feel superior. Jennifer stepped forward with another folder. Should I show him the customer service reports, Ms. Chen? I nodded, and Jennifer opened the file to reveal detailed accounts of Marcus's behavior during dealership visits. Comments about staff intelligence, demands for special treatment, complaints about service quality when things didn't happen fast enough for his liking. You've been consistently rude to my employees, I said, reading from the reports. You called Jennifer here, too stupid to understand luxury cars when she tried to explain financing options. You demanded that a service technician be fired because he couldn't complete a warranty repair in half the standard time. Marcus's face was cycling through emotions, embarrassment, anger, disbelief, and something that might have been shame. Around us, the dealership staff watched with satisfaction as their difficult customer learned exactly who he'd been disrespecting. This is why you asked me about cars last night, Marcus said suddenly, the pieces falling into place. You weren't just reading articles. You actually know more about this industry than anyone. I revolutionized automotive retail in the western United States, I said matter-of-factly. The customer experience protocols used by most luxury dealerships are based on models I developed. The financing structures, the service quality standards, the inventory management systems, industry leaders study my innovations. David Kim appeared. In the showroom entrance, his expression a mixture of awe and embarrassment. Emma, I had to come see this for myself. The news is everywhere. Marcus, did you know about any of this? Marcus couldn't respond. He was still staring at the customer service reports, reading account after account of his own entitled behavior reflected back at him through professional documentation. The Porsche recommendation you gave me last night, David continued, I called 3 dealerships this morning. All Phoenix Automotive locations. They said you'd already called ahead and arranged for me to see their best examples, with special pricing. They called you their founding genius. I smiled. I remember our conversation. You seemed genuinely interested in finding the right vehicle, not just making a statement. Unlike some people, Jennifer muttered, loud enough for Marcus to hear. What happens now? Marcus asked quietly, his earlier arrogance completely deflated. Now, I said, you get to decide what kind of person you want to be. You can learn from this experience, recognize that success doesn't give you the right to demean others, and maybe develop some humility. Or you can continue being the person who mocks his sister's car while unknowingly begging her company for financing. I pulled out a business card, my real business card, with the CEO title and corporate contact information. If you choose the first option, we can have a real relationship. If you choose the second. I gestured around the showroom. Well, you're always welcome to shop here. Though I suspect the staff will be watching your behavior much more carefully from now on. Marcus took the card with shaking hands. Emma, I'm sorry. I had no idea. Last night, all those things I said, were said to the same person standing in front of you now, I interrupted. The only thing that's changed is what you know about my bank account. The silence stretched between us as Marcus processed the magnitude of his mistake. 8 years of condescension, of casual cruelty, of using his supposedly unsuccessful sister as a backdrop to highlight his own achievements, all of it revealed as based on a complete misunderstanding of reality. I want to make this right, he said finally. Then start by treating people with respect, I replied. Regardless of what car they drive or what job they have. Success isn't about making others feel small, it's about lifting others up. I turned to address the gathered staff. Everyone here has contributed to building something extraordinary. Phoenix Automotive Group isn't successful because of one person, it's successful because of thousands of people who take pride in their work and treat every customer with dignity. The applause that followed was genuine and sustained. These employees had spent years dealing with difficult customers like Marcus, maintaining professionalism in the face of entitlement and disrespect. Today's revelation felt like vindication. As for the Bentley, I said, turning back to Marcus, I think you should take some time to consider whether you're buying it for the right reasons. Are you trying to impress others, or do you genuinely want a car that brings you joy? Marcus looked at the Bentley, then back at me. I don't know anymore. I thought I knew what success looked like, but success, I said, is building something that matters. It's creating value for others. It's using your abilities to make the world a little better. It's not about the car in your garage, it's about the person behind the wheel. As we prepared to leave the dealership, Marcus paused beside my Bugatti. This car probably costs more than my house. Probably, I agreed. But it doesn't make me better than someone who drives a Honda Civic. It's just a car, Marcus. A very fast, very expensive car, but still just a machine. The Honda, Marcus said slowly, it really was a test, wasn't it? I nodded. 8 years of testing. And you failed spectacularly. But you're giving me another chance. Family gives second chances, I said, echoing his words from the night before. But this is your last one. The next time you mock someone for their car, their job, their circumstances, remember today. Remember that you never know who you're really talking to. As Marcus drove away in his Macallan, a car that would never look quite the same to him again, I stood in the dealership's parking lot, feeling the weight of 8 years of deception finally lifted from my shoulders. Sarah appeared beside me, tablet in hand as always. The story's gone viral. #AutomobileQueen is trending on Twitter. Forbes wants an exclusive interview, and 3 major networks have requested sit-downs. Schedule them, I said, watching Marcus's taillights disappear into traffic. It's time for Emma Chen to step fully into the light. And your brother? I thought about the broken expression on Marcus's face as he'd read through his customer service reports, the shame in his voice as he'd realized how thoroughly he'd misjudged everything. He'll either learn from this and become a better person, or he'll continue being the kind of customer we document in complaint files. Either way, he'll never look at a Honda Civic the same way again. 6 months later, Marcus and I had lunch at a small cafe downtown, his choice, not mine. He arrived in a 3-year-old Toyota Camry, having sold his entire car collection to make donations to automotive trade schools and customer service training programs. I've been thinking, he said over coffee, about that night at my penthouse. About all the things I said. What about them? I was wrong. Not just about you, but about everything. About what matters, about how to treat people, about what success actually means. I nodded, recognizing the sincerity in his voice. The change hadn't been immediate or easy, but it had been genuine. Marcus had spent months confronting his own behavior, apologizing to dealership staff he'd mistreated, and rebuilding his understanding of what it meant to be successful. The funny thing is, Marcus continued, I'm happier now than I was when I had all those cars. I was so focused on impressing others that I forgot to be impressed by the right things. Like what? Like having a sister who built $1 billion empire while I was too arrogant to notice. Like working with people who find meaning in their jobs instead of just chasing the next promotion. Like driving a reliable car instead of a statement piece. I smiled, thinking about the Honda Civic still parked in my garage, not because I needed to maintain a disguise anymore, but because it reminded me of the importance of staying grounded, regardless of success. You know what the best part is? Marcus asked. What's that? When people ask me about my sister now, I get to tell them she's the most successful person I know. And not because of what she owns, but because of who she is. As we parted ways that afternoon, Marcus heading back to his more modest apartment and his work with a legal aid society, I reflected on the unexpected gift his cruelty had given me. His mockery had forced me to examine my own relationship with success, to consider whether I was building something meaningful or just accumulating wealth. The answer, I discovered, was both. Phoenix Automotive Group had become more than a business, it was a platform for treating people with dignity, for creating opportunities, for proving that success and kindness weren't mutually exclusive, and sometimes, late at night when I was reviewing dealership reports, I would smile thinking about that Honda Civic sitting in my garage beside cars worth millions of dollars. Because the most valuable thing I'd learned wasn't about engines or profit margins or market dominance. It was about the difference between being impressive and being worthy of respect. Marcus had finally learned that lesson too. And maybe, in the end, that was worth more than all the luxury cars in the world. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe and turn on the notification bell, so you don't miss any upload from us.